Uh, Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you to all of you for coming and being here. I think you may have thought you're going to see Kylie, but you got Keir instead, I'm afraid. But I do want to say a big thank you to you, because we've come here to get a proper sense of the work that you do. We've come here to hear about how successful you are. This is an incredible place to work. The amount of work that you do from here is phenomenal. This company has grown and grown, and that's down to you and the skills that you bring to what you do day in, day out. And for me, there's no substitute for coming to places where you and others work and getting a sense for myself of what you do, how skilled it is, and how important it is to our country. I've said many times, my dad was a tool maker. He worked in a factory. But that matters to me, because until I went off to college, I didn't even know any working environment other than a factory. So it is really, really important for me to be here today and to say thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. But thank you hugely for what you do, because it's really, really important. Thank you for hosting us here today. Really good to see representatives from BP here, Equinor and ENI, who have all worked so hard on this moment of partnership. And that's what it is, because this investment in our future we make together. And that is back to you. In other words, this investment, yes, it's a technical question of facing the future. Yes, it's about how we ensure that we get what we need as we go forward, the investment into our country. But above all else, it's about making sure that there were thousands of people like you with skilled, good, secure jobs that give you the security and the dignity and the pride in the work that you do. So yes, there's a lot of technicality in all of this. Yes, there's some numbers flying around, hugely important. But in the end, what matters to me and to us as a government is what a difference it makes to your lives and the lives of other people who are doing jobs like you, not just now and next year, but into the future, and making sure that we have you and them in our mind's eye when we make our decisions, because politics is about who are you thinking about when you're making your decisions. And that's why this is such a hugely exciting moment in the future of British industry, because as Ed has already pointed out, it is a landmark week in our national story, because this week we saw the end of coal. The end of coal, the power that built this country for many years. And now, as we see the end of coal, we see the new future on our horizon with carbon capture and storage. The largest program in this new and vital industry anywhere in the world. That is incredible. Right here in Liverpool Bay and on the East Coast in Teesside. 4,000 skilled jobs for working people, jobs similar to the jobs you're doing, skills. And because we're stabilizing our economy, and because we do this in partnership with the private sector, and because we're fixing the foundations and providing a long-term industrial strategy, a new direction, certainty and stability, and the promise of so much more, because tied up in this in the future is 50,000 jobs across the country in the wider supply chain. That's what's at stake with this investment today. Billions of long-term private investment unlocked, investment in hydrogen, the first industrial scale plant in the country. And for our energy intensive industries like glass making here, or cement, or steel, or ceramics, you're familiar with these, the security that the future belongs to them. That the necessary mission of decarbonisation does not mean deindustrialisation. Now look, this, if you like, is the politics of national renewal in action. We've been talking about national renewal. What does that look like? How do we face the future? And before I was a politician, I was a lawyer, as you may know. And one of the first cases I did was a challenge to the then Tory government's programme to close the coal mines. And that meant that I worked with families and communities who were going to lose their jobs in a really important industry for them. And I therefore know firsthand what this country lost when we ended coal in that way, because we lost jobs, we lost communities, we lost a way of life. I think we lost dignity. And we also, I think, lost identity, because we are the first industrial nation. That's who we are as a country. It's our story. A source of pride that this country, our country, communities like here in Runcorn, changed the world, and that what is made here matters. You can take that away from people without a plan to replace it, and it's like losing a part of yourself, a missing limb, an open wound, a heart ripped out of the nation. So yes, I know what we lost when we lost coal all those years ago, but I also know how we can rewrite our story in the ink of the future. That same identity, that pride, unlocked for new times. Now, you don't do that with a shrug of the shoulder or by telling an onrushing tide to stop. We saw plenty of that in Birmingham this week. And nor do you do it with false hope, sentiment, by treating industrial communities as some sort of charity case, rather than a source of growth and dynamism to be unlocked. No, what you need is a serious, unsentimental plan, a hard-headed assessment of where this country can win. What is our comparative advantage? And then the determination to roll up your sleeves and invest in the future. And that's what today is all about, with our partners in business. Because as both Ed said and Rachel said, carbon capture is a race that we can win. We have the financial know-how in London and Edinburgh, world leaders in green finance. We have the geology. The UK continental shelf holds a third of the exploitable carbon storage space in all of Europe. Just think about that. Our geology, a third of everything that we have in Europe. Huge potential for our country, for the jobs of the future. And we have the heritage. In this room, the skills and expertise that have moved and exploited gas at sea for decades. So I'm absolutely confident, mark my words, we can do this, and the timing is right. This is a technology that is now arrived, that is ready with this investment to scale. But it is just the start. I've always believed that clean energy is a golden opportunity for our country, a chance to bring security and hope to working people, relight the fires of renewal in those areas that got hit so hard by deindustrialization. But I'm not alone in that, and this is important because politicians around the world are saying the same thing in northern France, in eastern Germany, in the Rust Belt of America. Their aspirations are the same as ours. This is a race, a global race to get ahead, and I'm really pleased that we're putting ourselves in a position not just to be in that global race, but to win that global race, and that'll be measured in thousands of jobs for literally decades to come. One of the problems we've got is we've been too slow so far. The previous government stopped and started and started and stopped, and not just on clean energy, across the piece, life sciences, artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, the creative industries. They never once put industrial strategy on a stable long-term footing. And as you all know, there's nothing worse for investors than chaos and uncertainty. So today is not just a moment of industrial renewal, it's also a line in the sand. We're going to do things differently. In just under 2 weeks' time, the world's most important companies will arrive here in Britain for our first International Investment Summit. All these companies, global companies, coming here to Britain, and I hope to see some of you there, to have a summit on investment into Britain, into our future, into jobs like yours. But more importantly, I hope we can deepen our partnership, because investment is how we will change the country. We have to be smart. We have to be pragmatic. We have to invest only where we've got a clear and undeniable potential. And make sure, like today, there's a clear case for long-term growth. But above all, we have to invest together. because you can't bury your head and hide from the future. That's how you go backwards. But what you can do is use the power of government, the strength and skills of a nation to reshape that future in your interest. And that's what we're doing today with carbon capture and storage. That is the country's heritage, the politics of serious, stable government, the business of change in action. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for what you do. And I want to have the opportunity, if I can, before we leave, to just have a chat with you about the work that you do and understand for myself how you do what you do. But I really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you listening. Thank you very much indeed.